As per request by no one, the opening montages have finally returned. Let's give a warm welcome with a round of applause. Okay, now that is out of the way, on to what Massive Chalice is all about. Massive Chalice is a turn-based strategy game heavily inspired by XCOM, even going as far as including an Iron Man mode for you sadists. Be prepared for a lot of comparisons as the plot is very similar. You need to defend your kingdom from a foreign threat. Instead of aliens, they are called decadents. The first thing I would like to talk about is the difficulty. Honestly, I didn't find the game too hard. Sure, some of the missions were tough and there was a difficulty spike about midway through the game, but with careful planning both on and off the field of battle, I felt the difficulty was fair. Maybe if I played it on super hard, extra ridiculous mode like your sadists do, then I would suck. But on medium difficulty, it was medium. You'll be surprised the amount of games that can't find the sweet spot, so props to the developers for this one. You have 300 years before the Chalice, the massive one, charges up and releases its power to push back decadents and defend the land. Your job is to defend the kingdom until that time, managing both battle tactics and domestics as well. Your soldiers are called your heroes, and they each herald from a certain household. This is important for breeding and making babies, but we'll talk about that later. Heroes belong in three basic classes: caberjacks, alchemists, and hunters. Caberjacks are your big boys and girls who always deal with things with brute force. They wield a ram that they use to hit things with, and that's about it. Sure, they have extra abilities, but they aren't too noteworthy to talk about, except the knockback one since it stuns enemies. Hunters are your snipers. These badasses love taking out enemies from afar, and can move using stealth as well. They can be great scouts as well as offensive forces to be reckoned with. Their extra abilities are also awesome, such as the follow-up shot or the point-blank shot. It's easily one of my favorite classes. However, the one that belongs on the top of my list are the alchemists. They might not be the strongest or the fastest, but they are the smartest. Not only can they take out multiple enemies at once with their flasks, but they can also smack decadents upside their heads. They are incredibly useful, especially in the late game. God bless these intelligent fools. The classes are fairly balanced, but towards the end of the game, I didn't really care for the caberjacks. I did fine with my hunters and alchemists, especially in the final battle. The battles themselves are okay for me. The sound effects, music, and voice acting are all superb, but the strategy element is a bit of a mixed bag for me. My problem was how areas repeat very often and there was little variety in the placement of items. This seems to be a problem in many turn-based games, but somehow the original XCOM got it right. As much as the maps repeat, there is a unique array of enemies. Most notable ones are the Twitchers, who swap places with one of your characters, Ruptures, that rupture when they die, and the Wrinklers, that cause your heroes to age as they get hit. I hated those guys. Imagine if they existed in real life. One minute you'll be 25 enjoying life, you'll get scratched by this thing, and poof, you're 30 years old with a family of 3 and you're looking at yourself wondering, how the hell did this happen? Enough with the battle. Let's talk about the part that tickles my brain in all the right places. The kingdom management. From here, you can research new technologies, build buildings, and other random stuff. Unfortunately, you can only do one thing at a time, so it's best to plan accordingly. Researching and building is fairly straightforward. However, the breeding mechanic is pretty cool. You have the regents of keeps who represent their bloodline. You marry them with another person, which results in the regent's class, but can be mixed with certain people to make hybrid classes. Personalities and traits get passed down, so it's good to pick the best mate possible. I don't know though. I feel wrong doing all this. I feel like I'm breeding humans like animals. It makes me sick. Ugh. You also can build a crucible where a general can be placed to add XP to the trainees, as well as a sage guild to speed up the research process. What sucks is that I cannot change anyone from their position. Once they are assigned, there is nothing I can do to bring them back. I have to wait until they inevitably die out, which wildly varies for each character. When a distinguished hero dies, he will have a relic to pass on to his family. These relics are more powerful versions of weapons you already have, and give a sense of meaning and tradition to the households. Unfortunately, there's too much downtime here. I set what to research, have all positions filled, and now I wait until the game tells me something important, which is usually when somebody dies or when it's time to defend my territory. There are a bunch of miscellaneous things that bother me to an ethereal level. Unlike XCOM, Silent Storm, Xenonauts, UFO Aftermath, Aftershock, and especially Afterlife, I've never really developed any sort of connection with the heroes. Since battles are too spaced out, you are constantly changing old heroes for new ones. I can't feel for these characters since the time to go is just around the corner. Instead, I develop connections with the house they hailed from. The Zelenog were an awesome factory of hunters and huntresses that were all badasses, and the Deathblades were very intelligent tacticians who became unstoppable forces of nature. I'm not the one to spoil things, but the ending sucks. I felt used and played with the whole time. It was a bit thought-provoking, I guess, but it was ultimately unsatisfying. Baloney. Unlike the UFO series, there aren't really any special battles. Aftermath, Afterlight, and Aftershock had a ton of them, but there are nowhere to be found in this game, which would have made it more epic. There is a last stand final battle and the god-awful defending of the Sage Guild, but that's about it. There are a lack of customizable options for me. I wish you could extend the time for 400 years or possibly make it a shorter game of 200 years, possibly make more battles more frequent, or just something to add replay value. It's one of my biggest gripes. I don't really care about the graphics, but here the graphics are just balls. I understand the art style they were going for, which I do like at times, but here it's done wrong. Women just don't look like women, and sometimes I can't even tell who's who. Just look at this couple. Who the hell's the girl in the relationship? Overall, Massive Chalice is a decent title. I would have highly recommended it, but the mid to late game was a bit lacking honestly. Coupled with my random miscellaneous complaints, and you have a game that I can recommend, but only just. The combat is fun for what it is, and handling domestic affairs was interesting enough. If there was just a bit more to do both on and off the battlefield, it would have warranted a second playthrough, but it unfortunately doesn't for me. However, it is at least worth one playthrough. And if you are looking to get into the genre, this will be a fairly decent place to start as it makes things simple and doesn't overwhelm the player. Thank you guys for watching as always. Please subscribe and leave your suggestions in the comments below. And this is Pow3rh0use, signing off.